All right, welcome everyone back to another Team Kitchen Fable video. I'm here on cam. My name is Sean. I'm here with Jacob for the first time in quite some time. And today on the Open Boosters YouTube channel, we saw for the first time ever, or I guess it's yesterday by the time this video drops, the Blood of Dracai Fabled from Uprising. And we want to talk a little bit about what we think this card can do gameplay wise. We want to compare it to the other Fableds. But before we do, so subscribe to Team Kitchen Fable. Check us out on Twitter. Jacob has a lot of fantastic Twitter content on his personal Twitter as well, so I'll put it there as well. Like if you want like abstract meme content for Fab, like first time you read it, you think he's an idiot, but on second or third read, you realize he's actually making a good joke. That's the type of content Jacob has on his personal Twitter. So I'll link it out there. And then subscribe to the Patreon. We do exclusive deck techs. We've got a wonderful server where you can play with members of the team and friends, and exclusive write-ups as well, just about Flesh and Blood in general. So make sure you check that out. That'll be in the description too. But yeah, Blood of the Dracai. Jacob, what are your first impressions of this card?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I like the flavor a lot. The flavor of the card, I'll start with that because I have a lot to say about the power level. But I think it's pretty sick. I like the art on it. I like the art on some of the other gems maybe better, but yeah, it's like I don't know, a spaceship inside with blood inside of it? Who knows? But yeah, it looks sick. I like that we're back to gems. I think you said this also, but I really like the idea of having gems as Fableds. But without rambling too much about any of that stuff that I'm not really qualified to talk about. Not that I'm qualified to talk about power level of cards, but that's what I like talking more about.
Yeah.
We can get into that.
Yeah, so we'll get into this in a minute, but the Blood of Dracai, it says when you pitch Blood of Dracai, it's a red pitch, it's a resource, so obviously no block, no cost, no attack value. When you pitch this card, the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn, so the keyword is play, and I think that's going to be the biggest nerf on the card, but the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn cost 1 less. First impressions for me was this is like very on theme anti-frostbite. It basically says if I have this card and 3 0-cost Draconic Ninja attacks in hand, I can swing these, all of them, with a Channel Lake out in front of me, and still have a resource left to do something. So on a 5-card hand, that becomes even more substantial, and it kind of burns through the Channel Lake and things like that, and also works on Frostbites as well. It basically says, I've got a 2-card hand, I've got a 0-cost in Arsenal, a 1-cost in hand. I pitch this, play the 1-cost or the 0-cost, burn away the Frostbite, basically. I mean, you'd play the 1-cost first, because I think actually the way... Would it consume? No, it wouldn't. So basically it's saying, here's an extra resource with the potential upside of 4 resources total. And it's like a more immediate Valahai with the downside of that it's not a base blue, right? So yeah, that's my take on it. And I think what we want to do now is we want to kind of place the... I guess I didn't realize how to use this tier list. So D tier we're going to ignore. We have 4 tiers realistically here. We have should be a legendary, so meaning it's so good that it's too playable, and it probably should have a lower rarity. It should be more accessible if it's really going to be that strong. Very helpful is, something that you could see playing in a deck, not required, can easily be swapped out for something different, but in the right scenario, it can really get you over an edge, right? Then we have playable, so put it in a deck if you want. If it really fits the type of build you're going for, you could get some benefit, but not necessarily, not going to set you over any edges or anything like that. And then bobble tier, you might as well have a cracked bobble in your deck because there's no reason to play this card. So Jacob, where would you place Heart of Fyendal on this?
So when I look at Heart of Fyendal, it's interesting because to get the value off of it, you need to be a lower life. And to get a lot of value off of it, your game needs to last a long time. And it doesn't block. And these three things are almost at odds with each other. So you need to have a very specific deck to get value out of it. But even then, it's kind of fighting itself because at some point in time, you might want to block, and then you're going to be kind of out of luck. But also, you're not always going to be lower life than your opponent if all you're doing is blocking so that you can extend the game. But regardless, like, it's a blue. You're not losing value when you pitch it. If you're just pitching this, if you pitch it 2 times and gain 2 life, it is a card that gave you 2 extra points of value over the course of the game. But you could lose the game if it doesn't block in a crucial scenario. I would put it in playable. I think it's definitely playable. But I don't think it's an auto-include in, like, any deck out there. It's just, if you like playing with Fables, it's not going to noticeably increase or decrease your win rate, I would say.
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I really don't think there's anything I could add to that. I will say one thing is, like, we've often seen it in, like, a Control Bravo build, and sometimes when you're controlling that well, like, it is a resource card that doesn't block and you're ahead on life. Maybe you're up 10 life just because you've been really handling the game very well. And then you might get caught later with an on hit, right? And you've got that heart in hand and you can't handle the on hit. So I think that's a good example of one of the drawback phases where you can see that Heart of Fyendal. Where do you think I'm going to put this Eye of Ophidia?
I think I should say I know you're going to put it in probably a tier above. Should be a legendary if it existed, but we're pretty high on that as a group. I think this card is just amazing in almost every single scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about every single scenario because I don't think the edge is that high. Like, I think, like, you can't go play this in a... Like, playing this in a showstopper build doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you can't throw this in a hero. Playing this in Prism doesn't make a ton of sense either. You've already got too many no blocks. Most of your cards have some kind of added utility. And while you do have card draw, you don't have, like, a ton of card draw, despite what people want to think, because Erudition can be popped. Erudition is typically prepped for, and Tome of Divinity is not a build that we see very often. So I don't see this as being, like, a very strong, overpowered, should be a legendary in any hero it's played in. And also, it can be subbed out, right? Like, missing the opt isn't so influential that, you know, everybody's going to play it. Even Kano has a downside where he can, if he top decks shows Eye of Ophidia, then the entire turn is shut down because his ability does not allow him to banish the Eye of Ophidia. So there are definitely downsides. I place this in very helpful tier. I personally play this in my Briarless Eye of Ophidia in Briar. I run a Crown of Seeds Briar using Sonatas, Tome of the Arknight, dare I say it, Ravenous Rabbles, and the Crown. So basically what Eye of Ophidia is saying is in 4 of those scenarios, right, where I'm seeing the top card of my deck or I want to move into the next card. So if I'm snatching or flashing in a channel mount, I can basically dictate what my follow-up is to some card draw turns. And I think that is very underrated, especially when excessive card draw for turns where I don't have Eye of Ophidia can just be cycled through via Crown of Seeds. We also saw this in Justin Van Hay's ProQuest winning Reinhardt deck. He runs it just to guarantee more 6s, and you know his philosophy is there's a lot of variance in the deck already. More often than not, this is going to reduce variance, so let's lean into Eye. And I know we also saw Eye of Ophidia in some high placing Starvo builds in the Pro Tour. So definitely don't want to knock this one out, but I don't think it's not winning any one tournament, but it can certainly help in plays, right? Like, it's not going to win you a whole game. It's not going to win you an entire tournament, but it could help you in like 1 or 2 turns successively, depending on what combo you can pull off. So yeah, what about Arknight Shard? What do you think about Arknight Shard?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Obviously, it's gated behind being a Viscerize specialization. It is just strictly 1 extra damage on already pitching a blue. which is stuff that Viserai wants to do. Like Viserai need the blue to fuel his turns. Generally, you want to be doing, I mean, if you're running a Rosetta, you want to do non-attack, attack, and then Rosetta. Generally costs a blue or more sometimes. So obviously you want the blues, and it just gives you a rune chant. Like it's one card for 4, and that is the rate that you want to go for on cards. I would put it in probably very helpful, to be honest. And the feeling is if you did it on a Mortared Tide turn, you just got 2 cards off of it. And another unspoken, or not unspoken, but a kind of interesting benefit is you're shuffling your deck off of Become the Arknights. You could get back and do multiple Arknight Shard interactions without cycling through your whole deck. So that's an interesting tidbit that makes this pretty strong. I would definitely put it in very hopeful. I don't know if those 1 or 2 points are going to win you the game, and also it's just 1 card in your deck. So I wouldn't say that Viserai players should feel bad if they don't have it, but if you have access to it, I think it's a pretty good card to put into the deck.
Yeah, I'll leave it up here and very helpful, but I do disagree that it's like more of a playable thing. Having done very well on Viserai in ProQuest Season 1, and I didn't run it, I didn't think it was necessary, but at the same time, over the course of 2 ProQuest seasons, I think 2 out of the 4 Viserais I played against ran it. One time it felt really bad to be on the receiving end of someone pitching an Arknight Shard? Yeah, Arknight Shard. And the other time it got them killed, basically. It wasn't lethal, but it basically allowed me to land an on-hit that set the game over the edge. So the benefit is kind of linear, whereas opting with Eye can sometimes scale a little bit harder. Especially now that Bloodsheath is gone, you don't really get like compounding value. So I would say playable, but I do see it as like, I almost want to leave it in this tier because I want to encourage people to experiment more with Shard, especially in a post-Scaletta world. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree that I think it's better than Heart, but worse than Eye. So I think we can definitely say that.
Yeah. What do you think about Library?
Library is busted. I think this might be one that we disagree on. Library is pretty strong, but it feels awkward at times. I think Library can lose you the game, but it can also just win you the game for free. Like, basically for free. So
I'm going to give you an alternative perspective.
Yeah.
Crown of Providence makes this card unbelievably playable. It makes even more busted. It basically says you're jammed on Library turn, get rid of it.
All right. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you're going to have to deal with it when it comes back up, but hopefully you kill your opponent by then. But yeah, I haven't thought about it that way, but that is interesting. I guess if we're considering that, then I think the power level is definitely through the roof. Like you're drawing extra cards. Like even though it's just 1 extra card, and you paid 1 and you had an awkward turn to set it up, so you do lose some value to get it down. You could say that it takes you like 2 or 3 turns to recoup the value, but in Flesh and Blood, when you have like basically free go again in Prism, and a 5-card hand is like, in my opinion, a 5-card hand is not just 1 card better than a 4-card hand. It's like significantly better. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that kind of it's like if you're just looking at it from a numbers perspective, you need to recoup like 2 cards because it costs you the card to play it, and it's a card itself. Like it costs you the pitch. But if you're looking at it from like what you can do with the 5-card hand with Prism, I think you recoup the value a lot faster. So when you can land this, it's doing a lot of work.
Yeah. So I mean, if you value a card at like, let's just say like 3 points or whatever your theoretical value of a card is, right? Having access to more cards at one time gives you more play lines, more choice, and ultimately more synergy that your deck wants to see. So in a 4-card hand, if I block with 1, not only do I have 3 cards, which is, lower than 4, it's also, I had to choose out of those 4 cards which card to block. And when I have 5 cards and I'm still only blocking 1 in a turn, right? I have a greater, like, exponentially more lines of play in theory. I don't know what the true multiple is, like somebody who's like really mathematically oriented can do this, but I haven't. Basically, it's like a factorial of different plays that I can make. And if I'm doing that multiple times, like even just 1 or 2 times, I am getting the raw card value of pitching and playing the library, and then B, the extended value of having options. So
Yeah.
I think I would agree with you that it was very helpful prior. I mean, it does auto win games sometimes. Like a turn 0 library is, if you're on the receiving end of that, good luck. Most decks don't play enough yellows to destroy it. And you can just auto lose a game. Like trying to roll through a prism with five cards in hand every turn is near impossible. Especially since typically the aggro variants will play this, and they're happy to just pitch 2 cards, rip some heralds at you. And when they're pitching 2 cards and ripping 2 War Tunes and like an Erudition or 2 War Tunes and a Protection every turn, they're averaging around 20 points plus on hits and stuff like that. So you just don't want to deal with that. I agree.
Yeah.
Should be legendary. Crown of Providence going to be way OP in the current builds of Prism. If you're playing the Aura build, I understand why you wouldn't play it, right? If you're playing like the Mage Master, go into it. But I think if you're doing, let's face roll some heralds at people, play a fractal at the end of the turn, Crown of Providence is for you. And therefore library, in my opinion. Korshem, do we need to talk about this one, or can we just put it in its rightful tier?
You can go for it.
All right, Bobble tier. No one knows how to read this card, okay? I'm not going to try to explain it to you. I'm not going to try to explain to you what Korshem does. It is jumble. Like, it was a great effort from LSS to, like, put flavor into a card. But, like, sometimes too much spice ruins the dish. And I think that's what happened with Korshem. Valahai? You want to talk about Valahai for me as a Guardian player, sir?
I would put Valahai, I think, in playable. I tested with this card when it came out, obviously, but that was also when Prism was just immediately busted, when everyone was just like, oh, let's put all the auras in there. This card sucks against Prism because you don't want those Seismic Surges half the time. It means that they can Arclight your entire turn. So I would not run it against Prism. I think there's probably I think you could probably consider running it in Blitz. I don't know. I think it's worse than Heart. But the other thing is, with Guardian, you don't know if that Surge is going to get used on your next turn. So when you think about the Seismic Surges from Tectonic Plating, they're kind of like free tendies, because the only reason you really made that Seismic Surge was to make your hammer hit for 6 off of 2 cards, and that's already on rate, and those cards stay in your deck. So if the Seismic Surge doesn't get used, you actually generally don't care. But if it does get used, then you're gaming. So I think if you want to use Valahai, you actually need to have a deck that cares about using the Seismic Surges more often. I mean, that could be like a Heave deck, a Heave-centric deck, or probably Valda really likes this card for pretty obvious reasons. Valda likes the Seismic Surges if you're a UPF player. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's not Bobble tier because it's not making your deck actively worse by playing it unless you're playing against Prism. But I don't think it's not like overwhelmingly strong, I would say.
I agree. If we could somehow put like a fake cost on this card so it could turn on Anathos, the card would be busted. Like if you could pitch Valahai, get a Seismic Surge off Tectonic and from the pitch effect, and then pitch another 3-cost blue to swing Anathos for 6, like, card would be cracked. But it's not. So I agree. Playable, if you want to try something out, specific builds, I think it'll be phenomenal. It's obviously already phenomenal in UPF. PvE, it'll be great. And so that brings us to, we talked about at the beginning of the video. Finally, I'm excited to place this card, and that is Blood of the Dracai. Just to recap on what the ability is, it says that when you pitch it, it's a red resource, our first red resource, and when you pitch Blood of the Dracai, the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn cost 1 less. I already covered that this directly affects Channel Lake and Frostbite, so if you have a 4-card hand of zeros or whatever, and you have that extra cost that's coming in, it's still giving you that 4 resource pitch in the immediate term, which in my opinion makes it way better than Valahai, because the Seismic Surge is a theoretical resource, whereas this is a... And yes, if you don't have Draconic cards to play, you don't get resources, but if you synergize your deck properly, you can see returns on the investment immediately. And I'll take that over like theoretical returns on investment in the next turn, where I can't control how my opponent's going to attack me, how they're going to defend my current turn. So more agency is in my hands when I'm playing Blood of the Dracai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it. For Dromai, this card could literally say your next Draconic card costs 1 less, and I'm pretty sure it's playable. I'm like really high on this card in Dromai. We can talk about it in Fi later, but when you look at Dromai's cards and the fact that she just expressly wants to pitch reds anyways, you already did what you want to do. If one of your thing costs 1 less, then congrats, you just like you benefited. So if you can get 2 or 3 things to cost 1 less, I don't know if that's generally going to happen in Dromai, because she's generally going to be swinging for 0 off her dragons, unless, like Sean said, you have the Channel Lakes out. Even if you just like end your turn, like you do, you play a 0 cost, or you play like a 1 cost Invocation, and then you swing a couple of dragons, then end your turn with, I don't know if there's any Draconic Illusions attacks, but like another 1 cost Draconic thing, I think you're like really chilling. I think this card's very strong. I've talked to the teammates. Their view on this card in Fi, I think, makes a lot of sense. They'd rather it just be a blue. They'd rather just be consistent. You disagree on that as well, but I'm a little bit more okay with that take. But I think in Dromai, I think this is like legitimately busted, and if I pull one, I think I'm going to be playing it for sure.
So, helpful or legendary?
Oh, it should definitely be a legendary.
No shot. All right, that's serious. That's big.
Yeah, no, I think this card is like... I think this card is the sauce, dude.
Yeah, but it doesn't like auto win. It's like a single pitch, bro. Like, it's 1 card in a 60 card deck, which is why I think Library is different, right? Because Library, it's there until your opponent nukes it, right? So I think like by default, because this has no other card, like I understand the value, but like by the same token, like if this is that good, then so is I.
Interesting.
And I don't. Yeah, so I don't. The only reason I say that is because if you're cycling through your deck, you might see this. You might get the benefit 2 or 3 times a game, but it's literally just like 1 or 2 resource benefit. Library is like multiple card benefits and the choices and play lines over time. Which is why like I think we have to be like, sure, I mean, yes, we can probably say that it should be a legendary and be less good than Library, but I don't even think they're in the same tier.
Interesting. Yeah, I see what you're saying, how you're defining the tiers. It's definitely not as strong as Library. I agree with that. But if you had a card that was a blue, or if you had a green card, it has no text, but it pitches for 4, I think you want to run that card. I don't know, it just feels pretty strong, and I think that's effectively what it is for Dromai. I will put an asterisk and say, for Dromai, I think it's good. I would definitely rate it above Eye of Ophidia in power level and below Library.
I can let that happen. I can say, despite my... By the way, guys, I'm trading a gold foil Anathos for 3 Eye of Ophidias. Hit me up if you're down for that. I want all the Eye of Ophidias that I can get. If I could play 3 in a deck, I would play 3 in a deck. It would happen. So I kind of agree. I think it synergizes so well with Dromai. It's going to be such a headache to deal with. And then it does have that other side of... I think in Fi, like, I think this is a sideboard card into Ice. I said it. It's a sideboard card into Ice. It basically says, like, shred channels and frostbites for the turn. Like, if Islander wants to give me frostbites mid-chain and I have that in pitch zone, like, sorry, fam, I'll play 0 cost. And I'll clean them out, right? So, I think it's pretty decent. I think it's a sideboard card in Fi and probably main board in Dromai, potentially. But yeah, any other thoughts on the Fabled tier list or Blood of the Dracai itself?
I don't. I think I'm excited to see how it is. I will say that my statements were not backed up by any testing, so it may come out that your Dromai's play patterns just cannot get benefit off of this. Like if your turn is just going to be swinging a bunch of zero cost dragons, like maybe you're not benefiting, but also like I'm still going to play it. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Interesting to see how one landmark is top tier and one is bottom tier. I kind of like the aesthetics of our tier list that's going on.
It is pretty
But
nice. And the green
yeah,
ones are all in playable tier.
yeah. I will say,
And red and
I'm
blue
happy
makes
to
purple. Do you see that? This is great.
yeah.
This is positive stuff.
Just for the history of the game, I'm happy with I'm very happy with the design of Heart of Fyendal. Just as a aside, I think that being the first Fable in the way that that card works and the drawbacks and the benefits it has is a very interesting design space, and they've definitely been exploring. I think Monarch or Library definitely a little bit on the high side of power level, but yeah, excited to see where else they go with Fables. But it's pretty nice starting from Heart of Final and seeing where they went with it.
Yep. You want to sign us out, Jacob?
Yeah, remember everyone to like and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more content. We do gameplay every once in a while. We've been doing a lot of deck techs recently. We got Ninja One with Tyler Broughton, very well performing aggro ninja. We have a Rhinar one that won a ProQuest Season 2. We have some Prism ones, and then Starva one, which probably doesn't matter anymore, but you can watch it if you are interested. And yeah, leave a comment if you probably disagree with any of our statements, and let us know what you would have changed or what you think was right or wrong with what we said about the Fables. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.